I'm not sure if you have the same spark. Heart lead me to victory. Put logic to shame. Human love, it's all I can offer you. Human love, it's all I can offer. God purify what I prioritize.
All right, everyone, welcome back again to the Replicant Report. We're going to try this again. This is take 2 of episode 3 of the Replicant Report. I'm your host, Keith Giles. I apologize because this is a podcast where I talk about science fiction, whether that's science fiction novels or film or television, and just ideas surrounding anything really, comic books probably as well. I'm sure at some point we'll talk about that. And the original goal for this show was to do this show around once a month, and it would be something that I would do once a month, and just give you things like this, like, hey, these are the best books that I've read this year. So end of the year, I will do my end of the year top 10, probably top 20 science fiction books that I've read. The first episode I did for the Replicant Report was back in November. I think I did top the books I had read that year or something like that. And then the second one I did was all the best films I had watched that year. It was like a top 9 because I couldn't find 10 that I had watched to that point that I thought were good. So can you hear me now? Because I think the first time I was on, they couldn't hear me. I want to make sure you can hear me now. Everything's working good. So hopefully it is. All right. Real quick. So this episode, what I want to do, and again, I'm going to try and do these once a month. This episode, what I want to do is do my top 20 science fiction novels of all time. Now, again, of course, I have to give all the disclaimers. Of course, this is my opinion, not yours. You're probably going to wonder when I'm finished with this, Keith, I can't believe fill in the blank book wasn't on your list. It's either because I didn't read it, and that's why I didn't put it on the list, or maybe I read it and I just didn't love it as much as you did. So this is completely subjective, of course, as all top 10, top 20 lists of anything are going to be. I also need to give a disclaimer that this is a floating sort of, in other words, this is a fluid list. This is my list today, and frankly, next month this list could change. It could change because my opinion of one of the novels on the list could go up or could go down, or I could read a novel that I decide, you know what, this is really great. It needs to go on my top 20. And then, of course, that would bump something else off the list, right? So anyway, having said all that, let me just go down the list here. And I'm going to start at number 20. We're going to count backwards to number 1. And if you know me, you probably could already guess what like the top 4 or 5 are going to be. I think you would be able to guess the top 3, even if you couldn't guess the order. If you know me, you would know these 3 books are going to be in the top 3 somewhere. But maybe not. We'll see. All right, so I'm going to start with, I've got all the books, by the way, stacked next to me here on this chair. So I'm going to hold up the books one at a time as I go through the countdown. Okay, ready? Number 20, Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. I have only, when I read this book, the first time, I had only ever read one other Ursula K. Le Guin book, which is higher on the list than this one. but I just heard so many good things about this book specifically that I thought I need to go and read it. And after I read this book, which I really did love very much, I'll talk about it in just a little bit. But after I read this, I immediately went and read The Dispossessed, which is not really a sequel, but they're in sort of the same kind of what's called the Hainish cycle of novels that are in this sort of the same universe. There's not a lot of overlap of characters, but there's some overlap of politics and what's going on in the universe around the same time, right? So the interesting thing about this book, I think, because it's a book that for its time was doing something really original. This was copyrighted 1969. And the interesting thing about this book, the story of the book, is that there's an ambassador who is sent to a planet that is just on the verge of reaching a level of technological advancement that it could be included in other, sort of like there's an alliance, right, or a federation of planets. And so one single ambassador is sent in a ship to the planet to speak to the world leaders and interview them and see if they are, if they're ready to join this human alliance of planets in the galaxy. And of course, there's a list of pros and cons that they would have to consider, but it's mostly pro. You know what I mean? It's mostly good because it's about the opportunity to trade with other planets who have other resources and things that you don't have, and of course, you have things that they would want, right? So, but here's the thing about the planet. Human life on this planet has evolved slightly differently. And people are sort of, they have a fluid gender. I think they're born female, and then when it's time to sort of procreate, when they reach sort of a puberty level or something, and then I think there's cyclical sort of seasons where a person might be sort of like, I hate to say it this way, but sort of in heat, like, you know what I mean? You're fertile and you're ready. And then you would physically transform to a male, or maybe I'm getting it backwards. Maybe they're all male. And then when it's time, I think that's what it is. When they're all male, and then when they're sort of fertile, they transition to a female, then they can have sexual relations with a male of the species, and then they can have children. So, I mean, for 1969, that was pretty progressive stuff. And it's a really beautiful novel because it is sort of about, kind of like I'm describing this basic idea of the ambassador coming to the planet and all that. But a lot is going on around that, and things happen that are completely unexpected. And it ends up actually becoming a story about friendship and love between the ambassador and one of the other people on the planet. Just really great. I mean, Ursula Le Guin is amazing. This is a great novel, and highly recommend it. That's number 20. This one is a little bit newer novel. It's called The Water Knife by Paolo Bacigalupi. This was on my top 10, I think, from last year. So if you watched the first Replicant Report, you've heard me talk about this book. Excellent book. I have attempted to read other novels by this same author because this book was so good. And I have yet to find a novel by this author that measures up to this one. So this may just be a fluke. I don't know. But it's very good. It's, I'll just read the back of the book. In the near future, the Colorado River has dwindled to a trickle. Detective, assassin, and spy Angel Velasquez cuts water for the Southern Nevada Water Authority, ensuring that its lush archaeology developments can bloom in Las Vegas. But when rumors of a game-changing water source surface in Phoenix, Angel is sent south to hunt for answers that seem to evaporate as the heat index soars. So that's the basic setup for it. And essentially, it's what they call a cli-fi novel, where in the future, and this, in fact, the research that the author did for this novel is based on actual numbers. And so it's not that far in the future that this could be very real. I think I saw an interview with him talking about how he interviewed someone who is like a water expert for the United States government. And that person said that it would only take like 2 or 3 like droughts in a row, like annual droughts in a row, for us to reach this level where water would be highly rationed. It would be more expensive than gold. People would kill each other for water. And governments, local governments. So what's happened in the United States in this novel, really basically every state has a hard border. So to cross from Texas into New Mexico, for example, is like crossing from, from East Germany to West Germany, right, in the Cold War. So it's a big deal. And because different states have different water rights and they don't want to have too many people coming into their state, because then that's too many people consuming water and they only have so much water, vice versa, right? So, but excellent novel, very well written. It's a bit of a thriller, but also just has some really great writing in it. All right, number 18. Again, probably not a surprise to anyone that knows me that Philip K. Dick is going to show up on this list. And this novel is Ubik. Ubik is probably one of my all-time favorite Philip K. Dick novels. There is another Philip K. Dick novel that's about to show up on the list, a little bit higher in the list than this one. And I'll talk about why I put it higher than this one. But honestly, I love this film. It's not a film. I love this novel because it is just, again, as a writer, I marvel at the way Philip K. Dick structured this novel. The way, once he sets up what's really going on, well, what you think is going on in the novel, every single chapter to the very end I ended every chapter just, I turned the page and said, holy cow, what just happened? And then I would read the next chapter, and the end of that chapter, I'd be like, whoa, what? And then I'd read the next chapter, and it would end just like, hello? And it was just every single chapter was just another layer of something like, what the hell is going on? But he does a beautiful job pulling it all together. It's weird, it's strange, it's quirky, it's, I think, genius. And I love Ubik. I have another cover. I have a t-shirt of this, by the way, also. This is a Bob Pepper cover. I have a whole series of Bob Pepper covers that are these DAW science fictions that Philip K. Dick that he did for Philip K. Dick novels. This is my favorite cover of Ubik. But I got a couple of Ubiks because I love it so much. Anyway, that's Ubik. Love it. Let's see. Next one. This is a little bit also a newer novel that I read last year. This is How You Lose the Time War. Max Gladstone and Amal El Mathar. So it's 2 people writing it, and the whole setup is it's two characters who in the beginning they're assassins and they're spies, and they're fighting for different sides. And then they start leaving letters and notes to one another. They never really meet in person, but all of their communication is by these notes they leave each other as they're jumping through time and trying to one-up each other in each other's organizations in the Time War. And then they slowly begin to create a friendship, and then that friendship develops into something even more meaningful. And it's really beautiful. After I read it, I asked my wife Wendy to read it, and her reaction when she finished it was the same as mine, which was that she cried, and I cried also. It's a very beautiful science fiction novel, and highly recommend it. That's why it's on my list. All right. Also, a more recent novel. I'm going to get to some classics. Hold on. I hear you. I know, like, oh, Keith, all your top 20 novels were published in the last 5 years. Not all of them. Once we get to the top 10, you're going to see. That's where we're going to really get into the classics. Okay. But this novel by Ray Naylor, The Mountain and the Sea. I read another novel by him that came out the year after this novel came out. It was a novella, really. The Tusks of Extinction. And it was well written. It was very good. I did enjoy it. But nothing like this. Okay. This novel, this was the best novel I read, in 2024? 2023, I think. Yes, that's right. It was my number 1 book 2 years ago. just fantastic. And so it's, again, near future. And essentially what happens is there's a sort of a group, a familial group of octopus that are living along these coral reefs, and they begin to evolve into a higher intelligence. And we can see them using tools and weapons and thinking at a much higher level than even we do. And they're very organized. They have their own language. They start creating an alphabet and a language to communicate. I don't want to spoil too much beyond that, but it's just fascinating. Great concept. There is a little bit in here about AI, of artificial intelligence. In fact, I've heard some people say that to them, this is more about AI. To me, this is more about the octopus stuff, which is what I'm interested in. That was the most fascinating part of the novel to me. And by the way, this is, to me, the best cover option available out there for that book. Really love The Mountain and the Sea. Okay, now this one's a little bit older. Let's see when this one came out. So hold on a minute. Hold on. This book was released in 2008. So a little bit older, early 2000s. And this book is called Little Brother. It's by Cory Doctorow. I have not read much of Cory Doctorow's other writings in the past, although I have read the sequel to this book, which is not as good, sadly. But this book is genius. I'm actually surprised that a book like this even got published, because while it is a story about a high school student and his friends who are sort of accidentally pulled into they're skipping class to do some kind of like online video game where you have to find things that are hidden in the city or whatever, and kind of like that Pikachu game, you know what I mean? But like that, but not that. And anyway, while they're out sort of skipping class, they're at around the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, and there's a terrorist attack. A bomb goes off to blow up the bridge. They are rounded up basically by Homeland Security and NSA, bag over the head, zip tied, and these kids are thrown into an unmarked van, driven to an unmarked location, unknown location. They're tortured because our government thinks they had something to do with it. Why were you there? What were you doing there? Blah, blah, blah. And after he's released, the main character is released from this, he and his friends, because they're really smart and and they know how to use the internet and how to even kind of outsmart the NSA, they start doing this kind of like, how do I describe it? It's a very subversive, kind of like rebellious, subversive way of communicating with their friends to push back against the government, the fascist government. And so a lot of the things they do, a lot of the techniques they use in the book are real. And in fact, at the back of the book, Cory Doctorow has essentially a how-to list of websites you can go to, books you should read, how you can also become some sort of quasi-activist potential troublemaker. And that's pretty amazing to me anyway, that you would publish a book like this for kids. I mean, it's kind of a young adult novel, but it's basically giving them websites and books to read and things they can do and ideas for how to organize, how to share information without the government knowing about it, how to encrypt things that the government can't, decrypt, and things like that. So it's a sort of a technological resistance manual for teenagers. Little Brother. It's really cool. And I was really my hopes were so high for the sequel, because I was hoping it was going to be more of the same, more of that kind of subversive kind of stuff. And sadly, it was not. So anyway, all right. So now we're getting more into the classics. This one on my list is number 14. And I'm sure a lot of people would have thought this would be much higher on the list. But this is Brave New World. Now, of course, this is the kind of a book we should be reading right now, as we are sort of living under a dystopian government. The thing about Brave New World, I enjoy it, and I do think it has a lot to say about. It's a wonderful sort of a social commentary about dystopian governments and societies and the way we behave. And there is a lot in the book that does sort of reflect the way we are today, the way we behave, the way our sensibilities, the way we treat, for example, pharmaceuticals. Because in this book, people just take pharmaceuticals, right? There's something called soma, and you take it basically to just not think and to check out of all of the angst and anxiety and fear that you have about yourself in this dystopian society. And the drug just sort of, smooths you out and calms you down, and you don't ask any questions, right? But it also contrasts people living in this high-tech kind of dystopian world with people sort of like living outside the cities. They call them basically, they're barbarians, they're savages. But their fascination that they have, that the people in the city and in the technology, and the dystopian technology-driven society, they're fascinated by these people that, that, oh my gosh, they just have sex and have children without, because in the city and under the dystopian rule, you have all the sex you want, but you don't get married and you don't have babies, right? The babies are grown in a test tube babies kind of a thing in a lab. So it's fascinating. It's really good. To me though, it's just it suffers. Where I think this book suffers is that there's not a compelling main character. There's not a character that I identify with, and I was not very satisfied with the ending of the novel. I just didn't, as a novel, it didn't really work for me as much as I wanted it to. But hey, it's still high on the list. Okay, number 13, Frankenstein, basically the first true science fiction novel about the dangers of technology, and specifically about playing God with technology. So I'll be honest, this is the only book on my list I have not read. So I apologize. But it has to be on my list just because I have to acknowledge the significance of this book in the pantheon of science fiction, that all science fiction that has come after this owes a debt of gratitude to Mary Shelley for basically showing us how it's done. And I promise I will read this book one day, and it may go up in the list actually once I actually read it. My kids have read it. My wife has read it. They all jump down my throat because I haven't read it. So I will read it eventually. I promise. Okay, number 12. I really love this book, and this is the only book by this author on my list. Although I have tried to read other books by this author, again, they just haven't done it for me. In fact, I've pretty much have started and not finished books by this author, sadly. But this book, just something about it, maybe I picked it up at the right time. But man, I really love it. It's Rendezvous with Rama. Rendezvous with Rama is, again, this was written, let me look it up, 1973. And the thing about this book, it's about an object, a long cylindrical object that enters our solar system. And we send a crew out to intercept it. And they have to break into it, essentially. And it's massive. It's huge. And when they do, what they find inside, I probably shouldn't spoil too much. But they do find something really fascinating inside. And the book is basically layer by layer, the crew going through this alien, and this is the first sort of alien contact, going through this alien ship, and the things they discover. Some things we can't understand. Some things are completely confusing to us. Who built it? Why was it built? What's it doing flying through space like this? Blah, blah, blah. And I think it's especially interesting because, we've had the Oumuamua satellite that's come through. We had a second object that flew through, and we have one currently right now, right? 31 Atlas that's currently flying through our solar system and on its way to us, I think sometime around October, November. It'll coincide. So it's shades of Rendezvous with Rama. If you've read Rendezvous with Rama, you were probably especially nervous about this reporting of this satellite that's heading our way. Okay, getting now into number 11. And man, I got to tell you guys, I love this book so much. this book. Now, this is my all-time list, right? So you should expect to see this book I'm about to show you on my best books I've read this year list. So this book is so good that I read it for the first time this year, and it has jumped into my top 11 books on my top science fiction books of all time list. And it's Beyond Apollo by Barry Malzberg. This book, ladies and gentlemen, I think I probably had heard about it through one of the other sort of YouTube booktubers had talked about it, I think. And so I found a copy and read it, and my mind was blown. This was written in 1972. This was the very first Barry Malzberg book that I ever read. After I read this book, several things happened. First, I sat down and literally mapped out chapter by chapter just exactly what he did in this book. How did he write this book? How did he, because reading this book for me was like, it was a game changer. It was like, I don't think I'd ever read a book like this. And I'd never read a book where I felt like the author was giving me permission as a writer, as a creative person, to break every rule, to just do things that, like, because you want to, because you like to, because you need to, and to break those conventions and to just completely, rewrite your own rules, So Beyond Apollo, for me, that's what it did. And I had just at the time started to write my own science fiction novel, and it really just energized me and encouraged me to inspired me, right, to take this and the ideas, the freedom that he had, right, to not his ideas, but the freedom that he as a writer had to just do whatever the hell he wanted, and to color outside the lines. This book gave me permission to do the same, and I love it. Now, so the other thing that happened after I read this book, I went on a binge, a buying spree, and I have now probably my collection about 10 or 12 other Barry Malzberg books, and I've read probably at least half of them by now. One or two of them are pretty good. None of them, to me, come close to Beyond Apollo. Beyond Apollo is still far and away his absolute best book of his that so far that I've read anyway. You also start to notice, if you've never read Barry Malzberg, I'm going to tell you what will happen if you read more than one of his novels. By the second and third novel, what you will start to notice is there is a Barry Malzberg formula. It's not as obvious on Beyond Apollo. I do still think Beyond Apollo breaks even that formula, but there's enough sort of when I say formula, I mean like certain scenes will happen in every Barry Malzberg book. Certain ideas will happen in every Barry Malzberg book that I've read. Almost without exception so far. It's very, very few of the books I've read don't include at least a handful of things that happen in every Barry Malzberg book. There you go. All right, so number 10. Here we are. This is now the top 10. Well, I don't have a drum roll or anything, but my top 10 science fiction novels of all time. Sorry, I'm just now stopping here to go and scroll through and read some notes, some comments that people are leaving. Someone says like PKD a lot. That's Dirkut1. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, Eloise K19 says sounds a lot like where our current society is heading. Yes. I don't know which particular book that was, but yes, several of those books. Yes, probably The Water Knife. Yeah. That's right. Okay, good. All right, well, that's good. I've caught up, I think, on comments. Let's go back to my top 10 list. All right, here we go. Again, if you know me, you will not be surprised that on the top 10 list that I have a novel by Philip K. Dick. And the novel that is my number 10 is Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Now, of course, this is the novel that the movie Blade Runner is based on. Based on, but not the same. It's not the same story. In fact, the novel is almost an inverse of the film, or I should say the film is an inverse of the novel. Now, I love both of them. I think they both work, and in some weird way, they kind of sort of still make the same point, which is about humanity, like what makes us human. But they just make it in different ways. But yeah, this by the way, this is I think this is the first. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first paperback edition of the novel. I got this for like $2, believe it or not. So that's why it's in plastic, because it's worth a couple $100, I believe. This is another, also kind of a rare version of the novel. This is a Bob Pepper cover again, so I love Bob Pepper. He's my favorite. In fact, I played around since Acquire is a publishing company. I would love to publish sort of the science fiction cover art of Bob Pepper down the road somewhere if I could find a way to get permission. I've gotten in touch with his widow. Communication has been difficult for various reasons, so I don't know that it'll ever happen. But if it could happen, I would love it, because I would love to publish a book of Bob Pepper covers. Now, of course, I have other versions of this is actually the first copy of Blade Runner that I ever read, or under the title Blade Runner. But the book is still Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. They use the artwork and the title and all that. It says Blade Runner on the back cover as well. It's a picture from the film, but the inside the cover is still Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And so I watched the film. I loved it. I saw this on the shelf. I bought it. I read it. And of course, what I read was not what I watched. And I fell in. This was the first Philip K. Dick I ever read. And so I loved this novel. And so that's why, for me, it's number 10. I have a second version of that same book. I have another version here that's actually from the film, and it's actually black and white, incredible black and white artwork. It's just so gorgeous. I really love this. It's one of my favorite things in the world that I own. Yeah, so good, with a Jim Steranko cover. Oh, look at that. Just sweet, isn't it? So good. And then I just picked this up because I didn't have this cover version. It's the same book. It's just a different cover. I got it for like $2 at a used bookstore. I couldn't pass it up. So there you go. I think that is probably nearly almost every copy of Blade Runner that I own, or Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. All right, here we go. Number 9. Now we're getting into some real classics. Neuromancer by William Gibson. This book, boys and girls, it's so funny because I was reading this book. In fact, I think I had just finished reading this book a day or two before I went to see the movie The Matrix for the first time. And sitting through The Matrix, I kept saying to myself, William Gibson, the author of Neuromancer, should sue them, because the film The Matrix rips off this book so much. Of course, The Matrix rips off about 10 other things as well. This was originally, I think, published 1984. This is, it's not the first cyberpunk novel, but it is probably the first popular cyberpunk novel. It's probably the first cyberpunk novel that most science fiction fans ever read. It's certainly the first one I ever read. Excellent book. And there's a trilogy. After this is Count Zero, and then after that is Mona Lisa Overdrive. But this one, Neuromancer, incredible book. William Gibson, one of the all-time greats. And honestly, looking at my top 20 list, I probably should amend my top 20 list for next time, down the road, to include his book Pattern Recognition, because that book, Pattern Recognition, is also a game-changing book. What would I take off the list? What would I take off the list? I might take. Yeah, well, I don't know. I won't decide right now, but I'd be willing to take something else off the list to squeeze Pattern Recognition into the top 20. All right, number 9. I'm sorry, that was number 9. Number 9 was Neuromancer. Number 8, Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. This copy is especially, I love this copy because, first of all, the cover is actually a still from the film by Tarkovsky, Andrei Tarkovsky, called Stalker. And I love this film. And it's a film based on this book, Roadside Picnic, but also because it was a gift. This book was a gift to me from my son, and he signed the inside of it for me, and that's really beautiful. So yeah, this book, oh my gosh. I mean, the movie works much better on a spiritual level. There's a lot, because Tarkovsky took the ideas in this book and kind of took it to a sort of a spiritual level that you don't get so much in this. But I've read now probably 4 different Strugatsky novels. This is their best, hands down. So far, their absolute best novel. But they have others that are also very good. So I'm a huge fan of the Strugatsky brothers. But yeah, I love this book. Excellent book. I won't go to too much in the. Basically, it's the idea is the Roadside Picnic is that aliens have visited planet Earth, and they visited different spots around planet Earth. They haven't stayed, but the way, like if you're taking a long drive and you and your family pull off to the side of the road and have a little picnic, and you might leave some trash behind, right? Old cans and Ziploc bags and things like that. Imagine like aliens, super technologically advanced aliens, come to this planet, stop, to relieve themselves or take a little picnic or something, and then get back in their ship and fly away. But they leave behind things, and the things left behind are so technologically advanced. Some of them are deadly, some of them are to us like magic, and there are these people, and so these zones, they create these zones. The governments where these different landing sites have happened, they wall off these zones, and armed guards, you can't go in there. But there's people called stalkers who you pay them money, and they will take you into these zones. And of course, it's very dangerous, but the goal is to find some of this technology, and if you can survive the experience and get out of the zone, there's a black market for this technology. And that's just basically the setup. So the main character is a stalker. Okay, so now number 7 on the list of the top science fiction books of all time is, again, Ursula K. Le Guin, The Lathe of Heaven. This is incredibly, this I can't believe what great shape this copy is in. This is a vintage copy. It is from 1971. First printing was 1973. The first Avon printing was 73, but the copyright was 1971. Okay, so this is probably 1973. Also, another copy. I have 2 copies of this book, The Lathe of Heaven. The first time I came across was there's an excellent PBS film. You can stream it right now on YouTube for free. It's a great movie. Many people have said, and I would agree, The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin is the best Philip K. Dick novel that he didn't write. It's Ursula K. Le Guin doing her best impression of Philip K. Dick. And it's about a guy who dreams things, and whatever he dreams changes reality. And then he goes to a psychiatrist, who figures out that this guy does this, and then begins to hypnotize him and manipulate his dreams to sort of make things happen the way the doctor would like for them to happen. So anyway, that one's really good. Number 6, another fantastic book, Canticle for Leibowitz. Really, oh my gosh, love this one. This book, I think, would make a fantastic sort of like a mini series. I would love for someone to develop like a Netflix mini series based on this. It's after a nuclear holocaust. It's like a few hundred years after a nuclear holocaust. There's a Catholic, monastery, and there's a particular order of monks who follow this Saint Leibowitz. Now, the writings of Leibowitz were uncovered in a what they would call it a cave, but essentially it was a fallout shelter. We know it's a fallout shelter. They think it's some kind of a holy kind of special temple or something. And they find these writings of this guy Leibowitz, who it turns out is just some engineer, some scientist, engineer. But by reading and trying to make sense and understand this, nuclear engineer's writings, that sort of he becomes a saint, and his writings become sort of canonized. And it's also a story of how humanity sort of, we reach this level of technological advancement, we blow ourselves up, we knock ourselves back down the ladder a little bit, and then we start developing technology again slowly, and then we come back to this place of blowing ourselves up again, and then we just kind of keep going through this cycle, right? So this book is broken into 3 sections, and it's different groups of people over several hundred years, I think, of this development of humanity, getting back this technology to reach a point again where we could blow ourselves up again. And will we, or will we learn our lesson? Excellent book, very well written. And again, I would love to see someone develop that into a Hulu or Netflix miniseries. All right, number 5. We're in the top 5, guys. Calicane by Karen Boy. Now, this is another one that I only came across, I think, because there was some booktuber talking about it. It was totally off my radar. Karen Boy was a Swedish poet and novelist. She lived from 1900 to 1941. And she committed suicide in 1941 amid the shambles of the war-racked Europe, World War II. And this book belongs up there with other classic dystopian novels like 1984 and Brave New World and others. It's very well written. Essentially, there's in a dystopian sort of high control fascist government, a doctor develops a drug called Calicane, which he names after himself. And Leo Cal is the doctor's name. And this drug, when you administer it to people, they have no choice but to tell the truth. It's a truth serum. And it's the way this truth serum is used and abused by the government. He essentially creates it for, he thinks, good reasons, but it's the way it's abused. And then, of course, since he's the one that invented it, he's the one that they want specifically, personally, to administer this drug to different people. And of course, that adds some drama to it, because sometimes the people they arrest and bring before him are people that he works with and he knows and are friends of his and things like that. Very well written, very great book. Highly recommended if you've never heard of it, and especially if you like dystopian science fiction novels. Speaking of dystopian science fiction novels, number 4 on my list is yet another dystopian novel that I had never heard of for the longest time. I only recently had heard about it. It's a book called We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. I'm holding a copy that Quire Publishing put out as part of our Quire Classic series, with a brand new foreword by Damian Walter from the Sci-Fi Channel, Science Fiction Channel. I also wrote a bit of a publisher's foreword, publisher's note, because, of course, I love this novel and I wanted to say something about it. Also, just a really great novel. In fact, it predates 1984 by George Orwell, and it predates Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And in fact, it's because Aldous Huxley read this novel that he got his ideas for Brave New World. And of course, George Orwell wrote 1984 as well around the same time that Huxley wrote Brave New World. So the 3 of those novels kind of do share a lot of ideas. But again, this is where it started. Yevgeny Zamyatin. It's also fascinating to me because it's such, when you realize that this novel was written in 1920. And this guy, Zamyatin, who was a Russian, it's just astounding. Yeah. Such an amazing, in fact, I think he was one of the first books that was banned, and one of the first authors that was censored by the Soviets or by the Russian government. So the communist government. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's to me, it's just a breathtaking novel, published in 1924. Yeah, and so you read the introduction and read my notes, because the backstory of how this novel was written and what it took for it to be published and what he went through personally adds even more drama and realism to the kind of thing he's writing about in this novel, because he was living through this stuff. Of course, which is why I made it so dangerous. And this is the original version of the novel that I read the first time I read it, with the introduction by Margaret Atwood. And I think, is there an afterword as well? Am I wrong about that? I guess there is not an afterword. Oh, there is. Okay, this version has there's a bit of an essay at the end by Ursula Le Guin, and also a little essay by George Orwell, and an introduction by Margaret Atwood. So that's also really cool. I'd recommend this one and the Quack Classics version, because Damien Walter's introduction, his foreword, is excellent, and of course I have something in here too, which is kind of cool. And we have a little bit more background in the, what was going on in Zamyatin's life. All right, here we go. Number 3 on the top 20 science fiction novels of all time. Number 3, are you ready? Yes, it's Slaughterhouse-Five. This was actually the version I think I read the first time I read it, the paperback version. But this is a first edition hardback novel. I have to say it's actually not my copy. It belongs to Wendy, because she's the one who was with me when we were at the used bookstore just right around the corner, and she saw it for $2. I'm sorry, $4. It was $4. Yeah. Copyright 1969. Original hardback with the original dust jacket in very good condition. So yeah, great novel. If you haven't read it, I mean, it's probably also the best Vonnegut. I love Kurt Vonnegut. I also enjoyed Cat's Cradle. And I have a few other of his I need to read. I've read Sirens of Titan, which I enjoyed. It's not his greatest. Slaughterhouse-Five is beautiful, poignant, poetic, human, heartbreaking. Gosh, it's so good. It's about a character who pretty much is Kurt Vonnegut, who is unstuck in time. And really what you understand is that being unstuck in time is really Kurt Vonnegut's way of dealing with PTSD from all the things he suffered and went through during World War II, as a soldier in World War II, during the Dresden bombing, being a prisoner of war, having to shovel dead bodies and things like that. And so the main character is unstuck in time. He keeps jumping into the past, into the present, into the future, and back and forth. And so the narrative moves around a lot, but it really is just a way of the author and the character of dealing with their trauma and their PTSD. But still very beautiful. I mean, very beautiful novel. If you haven't read it, that's the reason why it's number 3 on the list. Number 2, and you probably could guess now. Think about the novels that I've referenced and the novels that I've not talked about yet on the list. What could it be? It's either this one or that one, and it's this one, Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury. Excellent book. Ray Bradbury, talked about this book and said, one of the biggest misunderstandings about the book is that it's not that the government in this book has forbidden people from reading books and that books are illegal because the government doesn't want you to read them. It's that people just stop reading books. They stop valuing literature, poetry, art. They're addicted. The main character, who is a fireman, right? His wife is addicted to these giant TV screens that fill the whole room. And it's nonsense, right? It's game shows and just bullshit. And really, this is why books began to slowly just become something worth burning. Now, the government, I think there's still a bit of the government could see the opportunity. It's better to have a population that doesn't think for themselves, that doesn't think critically, that isn't, sort of educated. And so, yes, that's why the firemen are out burning books. It's like, let's just go and get rid of this stuff. No one wants it anymore, but the government also doesn't want you to read it. That's why if you're caught with it, you're in trouble. And I just love this cover, by the way. I already have copies of this book, but I saw this copy at a local bookstore a couple years ago, and I needed this copy. And it's also in excellent condition. It's an older copy, but man, it's in really great shape. This is from probably 1976. No, 1984. This is also from 1984. But if you haven't read this book, my friends, this is the one. Great book. Okay, and number one, no shock, I'm sure. It's the big one, the big mother, big granddaddy of all science fiction dystopian novels that if you haven't read, my friends, you need to read it, because you know why? You're living it. And when you read this book, 1984 by George Orwell, you will notice how similar what's going on in our world today is mirrored in these pages. And in fact, it might scare you, because it feels like the world we're living in right now, that they have taken George Orwell's novel 1984, and instead of reading it and saying, oh, this is horrible, this is awful, let's make sure this never happens, have instead said, these are good ideas, let's use this as a blueprint. So it's about mass surveillance, it's about doublespeak, it's like what's happening right now in our world, where the government, you see something with your own eyes, and you hear something with your own ears, and your leaders tell you, don't believe what you heard, don't believe what you saw. We're going to give you a different story, and you're going to believe that. And many people do. They ignore what they've seen, they ignore what they've heard, and they will believe the story that their leaders tell them. This book, my friends, it's also, I think, the most powerful part, I think, of the book, because again, I've talked about a lot of books that are dystopian novels, right? And usually in these dystopian novels, the hero is pretty powerless. There's not much they can do. I mean, some of them, you know, they have little minor victories, but overall, in the end, you know, the fascists win. I think that's true. No, it's not. I think I won't say which one, but at least one of the novels that I've talked about, this dystopian, there is a little bit more of a decisive victory against the fascist regime. But anyway, I digress. The thing about this one, about 1984 by George Orwell, that I think is so powerful and so beautiful, is that one of the most subversive things that the main character in this novel could possibly do is to fall in love. Winston, the main character, Winston. He falls in love, and that's a subversive act. And the act of pursuing this woman and pursuing a relationship with this woman that he's in love with and who's in love with him, that in itself becomes a subversive act. That ultimately what the state wants to do is to use that against him and to basically deprogram him so that he no longer has the ability to love another human being, to have compassion on another human being, to have affection and emotion, empathy for another human being. It's the death of empathy. And again, it's one of the things I love. I got to mention Philip K. Dick. One of Philip K. Dick's novels, it's called The Zap Gun. Phil takes that idea and kind of flips it around where a character uses empathy as a weapon to take down sort of fascist controlling. And in that case, it's an alien threat. But it's by introducing empathy into the equation that you end up overthrowing, fascism and dystopian governments. And I love it. I mean, so just a wonderful book. Great book. And there you go. That's it. That's my top 20 science fiction novels of all time. I think if I do this again, so that if I do it again next month, that'll be September. I think what I may do is I'll do my best science fiction films of all time. And and now that list is about 40, maybe 45 or 50 films. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll go that. I may not do the entire list. I'll probably just quickly run through some of the later ones, and then we'll really start the list at around maybe the top 30, something like that. Anyway, not sure if you agree with my list. Probably, I'm sure you don't. That's the whole point of it, right? So anyway, I'm going to read back now through some of the Let's see some of the comments. Dirkut1 says, hey, I know the filmmakers of The Matrix. Well, introduce me, please. That'd be great. But he says he agrees with me that they did kind of rip off a whole bunch of other things. But look, I'm not mad about that. I love The Matrix. I think it's actually one of the things that makes The Matrix so great is that it borrows, steals, and is inspired by so many different things, right? Hong Kong cinema, Chow Yun Fat, action films, Ghost in the Shell, Neuromancer, Christianity, Buddhism, Alan Watts. Like, it's just kind of awesome because it's all over the place. That's what I love about The Matrix. Charles the Last asks, have you heard of That Hideous Strength by C.S. Lewis? I have, of course, heard of it. It's part of a trilogy, right? C.S. Lewis has a trilogy of science fiction novels. Now, I've never read them. I don't own them either. I've been tempted to buy them in the past. I've come across like all three of them together, kind of like a box set kind of a thing, or just a collection, a series. And I've thought about just buying it to own it. And maybe next time I run across it, maybe I will. But I haven't bought them because I'm not sure, to be honest, that if I did buy them and if I did own them, that I would really read them. And not that I'm not a fan of C.S. Lewis. I love C.S. Lewis. I love Chronicles of Narnia. It's one of the only sort of fantasy things I've read and loved. Mostly, though, as children's stories for my kids. And also because C.S. Lewis he kind of does straight allegory and sort of Christian allegories. I'm kind of done with those things, this is just where I'm at in my life right now. I don't really want any more Christian allegories anymore. I'm really done with those. So that's why. But Charles the Last also says, funnily enough, I think he means funny. Let's just say funny. Funny enough, there were concepts of robots in ancient Greece. Yes, that's true. While they didn't have the technology, the idea of the animated statue or moving bronze statue was a thing. Yes. Durkut also says, everything by Vonnegut is good. Try Timequake. Yes. Is Stranger in a Strange Land #1? No. Stranger in a Strange Land. Is that Robert Heinlein? I've never read any Heinlein in my life. But I'll be honest, I've heard nothing but bad things about Heinlein. So that's why I've sort of avoided Heinlein. Yeah. Durkut said, I just ordered Ubik. God bless you, my friend. Yes. Read Ubik and enjoy the insanity, the nonstop, relentless insanity of Ubik. Every chapter is is like another sort of a Twilight Zone twist, right? If you like the Twilight Zone, you like Black Mirror, imagine a book where every chapter is another Twilight Zone Black Mirror twist. It's packed with goodness. I am in awe that Philip K. Dick pulled that off in that novel. I would give anything if I could duplicate that, if I could do something similar. Oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. But I can't, at least not so far. Yeah. All right, there you go. So anyway, yeah, thanks so much. Again, the whole point of this is just for me to come on and talk. Oh, I got to say, by the way, I also wanted to put on this t-shirt. I'm sorry, I'm only not just now mentioning it, but DAW Science Fiction. This t-shirt, I'm so proud of this t-shirt. I love it. DAW Science Fiction books. If you go to vintage science fiction bookstore, like used science fiction bookstores, or go to the science fiction section of a used bookstore, no doubt you will see this DAW SF symbol. They publish the greatest books, guys. I got to say, most of the best vintage sci-fi was DAW SF, and I'm very happy and very proud of this t-shirt. I got the last one, by the way. So yeah, you'll also notice a lot of booktubers out there on YouTube who talk about vintage science fiction are also wearing a very similar t-shirt. I just had to put mine on because I want to be in the club. I got one too, and it's awesome. There you go. All right. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. I will probably, if I can do this more often, because once I go through my top 20 lists of films and best books of the year and all that kind of stuff, I probably can do some shorter videos, like 20, 30 minutes, where I'll just do a video and I'll just tell you like, hey, I do a lot of book hunting. And if I go to a used bookstore and I come back with 4 or 5 like cool books, I may just do that and just say, hey, here's what I picked up, or what I'm reading right now, kind of a thing. So there you go. It's a lot of fun. If you like science fiction, this will be fun for you. If not, I don't know why you're watching. But yeah, thanks for joining me, and we'll talk again next time on the Replicant Report. I'm your host, Keith Giles. See you again next time.